Okay, I am going to begin reading to you a book called The Spirits Book by Allan Kardec. This is the website I'm on right now called the Spiritist Society of Baltimore. And they have all these ebooks. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Gospel According to Spiritism, The Spirits Book, The Medium's Book, Heaven and Hell, Genesis. I've not read any of these, but just a little bit now I have read of the Spirits Book. I may come back and read some of these others, because this one is turning out to be so very good. I've been reading on it for a couple of days, and this Allan Kardec, he is such an erudite person. He speaks so clearly, and he uses a few words I'm not used to, and you can go there so easily and read this for yourself. But so many of the people that subscribe to me like to have me read to them, and guess what? I love doing it. And I love when I find a book. I found this book because of a comment someone who subscribes to me made, saying, hey, check this book out. I must have to reduce the size because there it is, Spiritualist Philosophy. Now, I'm going to skip a whole lot of the beginning because this part of it has a lot of words I cannot pronounce talking about the author. Now, if you want to read more about the author, you can go here and read this part that I'm going to be skipping. The Devoted Wife of Allan Kardec. This translation is affectionately inscribed. Okay. The preface, that's what I'm going to skip, the preface to this. Okay, we'll go back go down to where he actually begins. It talks about all the things Allan Kardec has done, which is considerable, and you might want to read this. I'm still going down. Okay, here we go. The Spirits Book. I will interject a few of my own observations. Oh, that's another preface. Let me go past that. Into this book, I will interject a few of my own experiences with the spirit world. For new ideas, new words are needed in order to secure clearness of language by avoiding the confusion inseparable from the employment of the same term for expressing different meanings. The words spiritual, spiritualist, and spiritualism have a definite acceptance. To give them a new one in order to apply them to the doctrine set forth by spirits would be to multiply the causes of amphiliology, already so numerous. Strictly speaking, spiritualism is the opposite of materialism. Everyone is a spiritualist who believes that there is in him something more than matter, but it does not follow that he believes in the existence of spirits or in their communication with the visible world. Instead, therefore, of the word spiritualism, we employ to designate this latter belief the words spiritist and spiritism, which by their form indicate their origin and radical meaning, and have thus the advantage of being perfectly intelligible, and we reserve the word spiritualism, spiritualist, for the expression of the meaning attached to them by common acceptation. We say then that the fundamental principle of the spiritist theory or spiritism is the relation of the material world with spirits, or the beings of the invisible world, and we designate the adherents of the spiritist theory as spiritist. Now I'm going to go down, I'm not going to read all of that because it goes into an awful lot about just the words. Oh dear. You know, maybe that is part that I have to read. Let me go back. Okay, I'll start right here. Some writers define the soul as being the principle of organic life, having no existence of its own and ceasing with the life of the body. According to this purely materialistic belief, the soul is an effect and not a cause. Others consider the soul as being the principle of intelligence, the universal agent of which each being absorbs a portion. According to them, there is in the entire universe only one soul, which distributes sparks of itself among all intelligent beings during their life. Each spark, after the death of the being it has animated, returning to the common source and blending again with the general whole, as brooks and rivers return to the ocean from which they were produced. This opinion differs from the preceding one inasmuch as, according to the later hypothesis, there is in us something more than matter, something that remains in existence after our death. But practically it is much as though nothing remains of us, since no longer possessing individuality, we should retain no consciousness of our identity. According to this hypothesis, the universal soul is God, and each being is a portion of the divinity. It is a species of pantheism. According to others, again, the soul is a moral being, distinct, independent of matter, and preserving its individuality after death. The acceptance of the word soul is certainly the one most generally received, because under one name or another, the idea of a being that survives the body is found as an instinctive belief, and independently of all teaching among all nations, whatever their degree of civilization. This doctrine, according to which the soul is a cause and not an effect, is that of the spiritualist. Without discussing the value of these opinions and considering the subject merely under its psychological aspect, we say that these three applications of the word soul constitute three distinct ideas, each of which demands a different term. Soul has therefore a triple meaning and is employed by each school according to the special meanings it attributes to that word, in order to avoid the confusion naturally resulting from the use of the same word to express three different ideas. It would be necessary to confine the word to one of these three ideas. It would not matter to which, provided the choice was clearly understood. We think it more natural to take it in its most common acceptation, and for this reason we employed the word soul to indicate the immaterial and individual being which resides in us and survives the body, even if this being did not really exist and were only a product of the imagination. A specific term would still be needed to designate it. For want of such a term for each of the other ideals now loosely understood by the word soul, we employed the term vital principle to designate the material and organic life which, whatever may be its source, is common to all living creatures, from the plant to man. As life can exist without the thinking faculty, the vital principle is something distinct from, independent of it. The word vitality would not express the same idea. According to some, the vital principle is a property of matter, an effect produced whenever matter is found under certain given conditions, while, in the opinion of the greater number of thinkers, it resides in a special fluid, universally diffused, and of which each being absorbs and assimilates a portion during life, as inert bodies absorb light, the vital principle being identical with the vital fluid, which is generally regarded as being the same as the animalized electric fluid designated also as the magnetic fluid, the nervous fluid, etc. And here I want to interject, I'm doing an experiment that is ongoing with light, looking at it through my camera, through the medium sometimes of using a glass marble, and I'm seeing light as though it were a fluid, because, well, my camera doesn't pick it up, but my eyes do. My eyes are trained now to see light in a way that most people don't. But when I see an orb of light, it looks as though I were looking through water, and I see little things in the light that are gel-like little creatures that disturb the surface of this watery look to the orb, and they just move all around. Now, I've seen this thing in the physical world that would look something like mosquito larvae moving around on water, on the upper part of the water. And not that it's anything like that, but that's just to describe the movement. But I can see that light might be liquid, because so much that I see in the light seems to float. And, well, I don't know what to call this light, but as I am reading this, and he talks about the liquid, fluid-like property of light, I'm thinking, wow, this fits right along with what I'm also researching right now. In my laboratory, which is my bedroom, sitting at my desk, you can do all the lab work you want right from your own room. But anyway, I'm going to continue reading this. I'll try not to interject too much, because you might get into this and wish that I didn't. Okay. He said, the vital principle being identical with the vital fluid, which is generally regarded as being the same as the animalized electric fluid, designated also as the magnetic fluid or the nervous fluid, etc. However this may be, one fact is certain, for it is proved by observation, that organic beings possess in themselves a force which, so long as it exists, produces the phenomena of life. That physical life is common to all organic beings and is independent of intelligence and thought. That intelligence and thought are faculties peculiar to certain organic species. And lastly, that among the organic species endowed with intelligence and thought, there is one which is endowed with a special moral sense that gives it an incontestable superiority over the others versus the human species. It is evident that, being employed according to various acceptations, the term soul does not exclude either materialism or pantheism. Spiritualists themselves understand the term soul according to one or other of the first two definitions, without denying the distinct immaterial being, to which, in that case, it would give some other name. This word, therefore, is not the representative of an opinion. It is a protean term defined by each after his own fashion, and thus given rise to interminable disputes. We might also avoid confusion, even while employing the word soul in the three senses defined above, by adding to it some qualifying term that should specify the point of view from which we consider it, or the mode in which we apply it. It would be, in that case, a generic word representing at once the principles of material life, of intelligence, and of the moral faculty, each of which would be distinguished by an attribute, as is done, for example, with the word gas by adding the words hydrogen, oxygen, etc. Thus we might say, and it would perhaps be the best plan, to adopt vital soul for the principle of material life, intellectual soul for the principle of intelligence, and spiritual soul for the principle of our individuality after death. in which case the vital soul would be common to all organic beings, plants, animals, and men. The intellectual soul would be the peculiar property of animals and men, and the spiritual soul would belong to men only. We have thought it all the more important to be explicit in regard to this point because the Spiritist theory is naturally based on the existence in us of a being independent of matter, and that survives the body. As the word soul will frequently recur in the course of this work, it was necessary to define the meaning we attach to it in order to avoid all misunderstanding. We now come to the principal object of this preliminary explanation. Spiritist doctrine, like all new theories, has its supporters and its opponents. We will endeavor to reply to some of the objections of the latter by examining the worth of the reasons on which they are based, without, however, pretending to be able to convince everybody, but addressing ourselves to those who, without prejudice or preconceived ideas, are sincerely and honestly desirous of arriving at the truth, and will prove to them that those objections are the result of a too hasty conclusion in regard to facts imperfectly observed. Of the facts referred to, the one first observed was the movement of objects, popularly called table turning. This phenomena, first observed in America, or rather renewed in that country, for history proves it to have been produced in the most remote ages of antiquity, was attended with various strange accompaniments, such as unusual noises, raps produced without any ostensible cause. From America this phenomena spread rapidly over Europe and the rest of the world. It was met at first with incredulity, but the movements were produced by so many experimenters that it soon became impossible to doubt its reality. If the phenomena in question had been limited to the movement of inert objects, it might have been possible to explain it by some purely physical cause. We are far from knowing all the secret agencies of nature or all the properties of those which are known to us. Electricity, moreover, is not only multiplying day by day the resources it offers to mankind, but appears to be about to eradicate science with a new light. It seems, therefore, by no means impossible that electricity, modified by certain circumstances, or some other unknown agent, might be the cause of these movements. The fact that the presence of several persons increased the intensity of the action appeared to strengthen this supposition, for the union of these might not ineptly be regarded as constituting a battery, of which the power was in proportion to the number of its elements. That the movement of the tables should be circular was in, and it says 110, but I have observed in this book there's several typos. I think this means no, and I will sometimes be reading I'll be reading it and I will just substitute what I think is a proper word for where they have made a typo. Now let me begin. That the movement of the tables should be circular was in no way surprising, for the circular movements is of frequent occurrence in nature. All the stars move in circles, and it therefore seems to be possible that in the movement of the tables we had a reflex on a small scale of the movement of the universe, or that some cause hitherto unknown might produce accidentally, and in regard to small objects, a current analogous to that which impels the whirls of the universe in their orbits. But the movement in question was not always circular. It was often irregular, disorderly. The object moved was sometimes violently shaken, overthrown, carried about in various directions, and in contravention to all known laws of statics, lifted from the ground and held up in the air. Still, in all this, there was nothing that might not be explained by the force of some invisible physical agent. Do we not see electricity overthrow buildings, uproot trees, and hurl to considerable distances the heaviest bodies, attracting or repelling as the case may be. The rapings and the other unusual noises, supposed them to be due to something else than the dilation of the wood or other accidental cause, might very well be produced by an accumulation of the mysterious fluid, for does not electricity produce the loudest sounds? Up to this point, everything might be considered as belonging to the domain of physics and physiology. Without going beyond this circle of ideas, the learned might have found in the phenomena referred to matter well worthy of serious study. Why was this not done? It is painful to be obliged to make the confession, but the neglect of the scientific world was due to causes that add one more proof to the many already given of the frivolity of the human mind. In the first place, the non-glamour of the object, which mainly serves as the basis of the earliest experimentations, had something to do with this disdain. What an influence, in regard to even the most serious matter, is often exerted by a mere word, without reflecting that the movement referred to might be communicated to any object. The idea of tables became associated with it in the general mind, doubtless because a table, being the most convenient object upon which to experiment, and also because people can place themselves around a table more conveniently than around any other piece of furniture, was generally employed in the experiments referred to. But men who pride themselves on their mental superiority are sometimes so puerile as to warrant the suspicion that a good many keen and cultivated minds may have considered it beneath them to take any notice of what was commonly known as the dance of tables. If the phenomena observed by Galvani had been made known by some unlearned person, and dubbed with some absurd nickname, it would probably have been consigned to the lumber room, along with the divining rod. For where is the scientist who would not in that case have regarded it as derogatory to occupy himself with the dance of frogs?